Anyway. So this is Gadgets for People Who Don't Trust the Government by Ben Jordan. This is going to be the first video we are going to be reacting today. And if you don't know who Ben Jordan is, I heard that. I was never in an ad. See, so you know it was a joke. He makes some really good videos. He's into music and science. Sorry about his eyebrow, so don't look at his eyebrow. Don't, make it obvious you're looking at his eyebrow. He's let us know he's self-conscious about it, so please don't look at his eyebrow. But he does, some coding stuff, some hacking stuff. That's kind of his background. Also, obviously, music. But this was the first video I ever, watched of his. The Richest Country is pretty mid now, which is a really good video. All about capitalism and how we're kind of in late-stage capitalism, or what he would describe as leverage. He used a leverage economy or something like that. But he's also done a lot of information, a lot of research, and posted a lot of information about the Flock camera situation. If you are not familiar with Flock, this is a very bad company that is just using AI to track you, your car, a whole lot of bullshit. So we're in a little bit of a weird time today. So if you are interested, this is for Gadgets for People Who Don't Trust the Government.
I am not using AI artwork. So someone you love is an anarchist, and it's gift-giving season, and you realize that...
Oh my god. Sid, thank you for the 12 bits. I appreciate that, man. Thank you. Going crazy with the bids.
Giving
the
them
biddies.
That gift certificate to BetterHelp, or maybe those Facebook camera goggles. I am not using AI artwork. So someone you love is an anarchist, and it's gift-giving season, and you realize that giving them that gift certificate to BetterHelp, or maybe those Facebook camera goggles, would result in them never speaking to you again. Maybe you're the anarchist, and this is a gift for yourself, and that's totally fine. Everybody deserves a little bit of self-care, regardless of why you're here. I'm here to help.
And when I say anarchist,
Thank you.
I'm not talking about somebody who live-action role-plays The Purge every day of their lives. Anarchism is formally defined as a philosophy that resists institutions that perpetuate authority, coercion, or hierarchy. And all of the things that I'm about to show you in this video are closely related to that philosophy. So if you were expecting a DIY recipe for C4 or the best way to burn down banks, that's still a few
Definitely
months
not.
out. But
Well,
if you're
okay.
interested...
What I am expecting from this video is going to be how to disable cameras remotely, because I know that there's some devices that do that, making wireless jammers, and then maybe stuff like Cyberdex, where you can have basically parts of the internet, so you could make a Wikipedia storage and just have Wikipedia offline. You know, there's a lot of things that you can do to kind of remove yourself and remove a lot of information to track you that then the government can use online, you know?
in a $40 solar lawn light that can
Okay.
network, or maybe an inexpensive way that you can pull imaging data directly from satellites and take a space selfie, or a tiny device that detects nearby Flock safety cameras, or maybe a $20 device that you can modify to let you know when ICE or law enforcement are tracking you via your mobile phone. And if that and a whole bunch of other goodies pique your interest, then take a seat. You're going to want to stick around, and you might even learn a little bit about anarchism in the process. Let's go.
Yeah, so I definitely think anarchism is always painted in a bad light, somewhat reasonably so. But there are elements of it that I would support, you know? It is not bad to have a little bit of an anarchist streak in you, because the government has a little bit of a hard-on to spy on you. Gift ideas for anarchists.
When making a video about a subject or a philosophy, I like to start at the beginning. And this is why anarchism is so fascinating to think about, because its beginning precedes all political or government ideas. Animals are anarchists. A fox can hunt rabbits in Arizona and bring them home to its den in Mexico. All children are anarchists. When you bring a 5-year-old to a store, they choose not to steal a toy by weighing domestic and social consequences, not because they're afraid of their state incarcerating them. So in some ways, explaining the origin of anarchism would be a bit like explaining the origin of hunger or infatuation or envy. A valid argument is that we are all born as anarchists, and we spend our lives being manipulated into appealing to authority. Because
Facts.
if individuals didn't recognize authority, there would be no passive route to tremendous levels of power and wealth. For example,
Facts. Facts. No, he's spitting fucking facts right now. Absolute just fucking bars right there. I mean, there are societal rules that people don't know that they should follow, but they are just ingrained within the societies. So one example I can think of is I'm planning for my trip to Tokyo. So people in Tokyo, they stand on like the left side of the escalator, but then in Osaka you stand on the right side, or maybe I have that flipped, but literally within the same country, they'd have different societal rules on how things operate, and you're just supposed to like learn those. So, you are just slowly being manipulated every kind of day to follow in line. And you don't even realize it. But there are things like that make you start to realize, like, oh, fuck.
if you took Mark Zuckerberg with his
Okay, so I go now?
$230 billion of private...
Oh, you're good. No, you can't. The fuck you think you're doing? You can't leave the stream. Leave it on, go to sleep, just mute it, plug your phone in, let it charge, let me talk all night, okay? You can't leave, Twig. It's not fucking allowed.
wealth and locked him in a room with every Croatian with their combined $230 billion of purchasing power parity. And if you ordered a gigantic pizza for everyone, I don't think that Mark would be able to convince the other 3.8 million people in the room that half of the pizza is rightfully his. But outside of this hypothetical pizza party, through our hierarchical and institutionalized lenses, most of us recognize the absurd idea that Zuck is as
Oh, you know
valuable
what?
as everyone.
Dude, you know what? I want some chips. Twig, I will respond to that. Give me 1 second. I just want some chips, dude. What the fuck is the difference when I mute the stream instead of just leaving? Because I still get a viewer. I still have one more plus viewer. That's the fucking difference, bud. It's about me. It's not about your energy bill, it's about me. And my success.
And everything in Croatia. Which then begs the question, why doesn't Mark Zuckerberg just buy Croatia?
Well, I only want to support you when I want to. That's fair. I can only ask for so much, and I do appreciate any attention that you decide to give me. Thank you. On a real note.
And make it his private residence. And
You have a lot of choices in streamers out there, and I appreciate you picking me.
this is where we'd revert back to our anarchist firmware, because I'd assume that most Croatians value their homes more than they value hierarchical institutions. We gotta start this off with what is about the most obvious anarchist-friendly tech that everybody should be using, while an alarmingly small amount of people even know about. Meshtastic. I'll get a little bit more technical in a bit, but Meshtastic, which kind of sounds like...
Okay, so I know a little bit about mesh networks, but I'm sure I'm about to learn a lot more.
A subscription service that would sponsor this video is the polar opposite of that. It is a freely available, completely decentralized mesh network that uses radio signals for encrypted messaging. And generally speaking, the more people who use it, the more robust and far-reaching and reliable it gets. You don't need an internet connection, you don't need a SIM card, you don't need a license or any type of subscription or registration to anything whatsoever. There are sexy standalone devices like this LilyGo e-ink messenger and plenty of other options, but most people just use something like this, which you can connect via Bluetooth on your phone or computer. And the cost of entry for Meshtastic is about $25 to $40 if you're ordering off of Amazon, and as little as $10 if you're willing to wait for the slow boat to arrive from China. Maybe you don't have a single anarchist bone in your body. You have WhatsApp and text messaging, and you get a data signal just about everywhere you go. Why the hell would you need Meshtastic? Allow me to answer that question with an example. If you look at the Meshtastic network to see the nodes that you can connect to, you'll notice that this is a very popular trend in North Carolina and that part of the East Coast. That's because last year, unfortunately, Hurricane Helene quickly demonstrated the need for off-grid communication, and people who had Meshtastic devices were using the network to help organize aid for their communities and find out what was going on. The idea that a $30 investment could keep you in touch with not only friends and family members, but the outside world in the event that a catastrophe knocks out power or connectivity isn't exactly prepper shit. Realistically, in that setting, it's more useful than a weather radio. And while there are seemingly unlimited amounts of Meshtastic hardware options out there, I'm going to be making two of them. The first is a simple lawn solar light that acts as a connectable Meshtastic node that I'll spend a total of $30 to $40 on. And the other is a solar-powered community base station or repeater node that I'll spend a little over $100 on. Okay, so how this all works explained as quickly as possible, starting from the very bottom and working our way up using my favorite thing in the world, stupid metaphors.
How Meshtastic works in
I love stupid metaphors.
Light waves are a form of electromagnetic waves, and we can only see a tiny fraction of them. And the light in this video is between 400 and 800 terahertz, but way down in the gigahertz range, you're getting your cell phone or Wi-Fi signal enabling you to watch this video. Now let's slow down the frequency of those waves to 915 megahertz, which is 915 million of these lumps and dips per second. Okay, so you may know that if you have a harp or a guitar or some type of string instrument and you play the same frequency.
I'm sorry, that's crazy. What?
To 915 megahertz, which is 915 million of these lumps and dips per second.
Brother. 915 million. There's almost a billion fucking cycles per second of just... God damn.
Second. Okay, so you may know that if you have a harp or a guitar or some type of string instrument and you play the same frequency of the strings, it'll start vibrating and ringing out on its own. Well, that's resonance, and that's exactly what's happening when electromagnetic waves of a certain frequency hit an appropriately sized antenna. And by demodulating ones and zeros from those waves, we can get digital radio, broadcast television, mobile data, and of course, Meshtastic. Now imagine that you have a walkie-talkie and your friend has another walkie-talkie all the way across the country. The radio waves on the walkie-talkie frequency are going to die out long before they get anywhere close to your friend.
Yeah, so this is basically, he's explaining a mesh network now, where if you have multiple people, like, you can't communicate this way, but if you have other people, then your signal gets stronger, and then you link up over time. A good way to think of this is actually like the chiral network in Death Stranding, because you can't send equipment over the chiral network from like one space to another. Like, they have to be linked, and then you can transport supplies. That's kind of how, like, that's the best way to think of how these signals work in these devices.
So that's obviously not going to work. But what if you, your friend, and 10,000 other walkie-talkie users all over the country were on the same frequency, accepting and rebroadcasting all of the data being transmitted on it? If you only send encrypted text or location messages on this gigantic mesh of users that only your friend can decode, well, That's exactly what Meshtastic is. And it's completely free. You keep the network up and running through participation. I only want to build mesh communicators that will work indefinitely, so being solar powered is an obvious way to accomplish this. And a gentleman by the name of Travis Gustafson showed off a Meshtastic node that operated within a cheap solar lawn light, so that's the perfect place to start. So I picked up a rack WiseBlock bare circuit board and a few different types of solar lights to experiment, and everything else was just spare parts around my lab. It seems like most of this stuff can be crammed into the solar panel itself, so in most cases, you don't even need to use the lamp. It's not even necessary. Unsurprisingly, there's a rechargeable 18650 flashlight battery powering the thing, which gives us 3.7 volts that we need for the WiseBlock. And first, let's drill an antenna hole for the connector, and then let's solder the WiseBlock to the battery terminals, and done. If you want to keep things super simple,
Dude, I think soldering is so cool. I know that's so random, but it just seems like such a cool-ass skill. I would love to get into, like, soldering or getting, like, a Dremel. Oh, dude, you can do some cool-ass shit with the Dremel.
you could be done right here. You could just screw the thing back together, connect via Bluetooth, and communicate through a decentralized network through a $7 lawn light. There are a few things that we could easily improve. We might as well use an antenna from an old 2.4 gigahertz router for Bluetooth so we can message from farther away. We can just get rid of this, drill another hole, and we're good. Now, if there's a huge downpour, I could see some drops of water getting in through these antenna ports, so let's put some silicon sealant around them. And while we're at it, let's use the empty space in the lamp casing to put a pair of 3300 milliamp hour batteries instead of this 1500 milliamp hour one, giving us 4.4 times more battery life to help us keep this thing on during a really cloudy week with no direct sunshine. And while we're at it, just in case we have a nuclear winter or you decide to use this indoors or something, we might as well utilize a battery holder with a USB charge port as a backup. We need to reverse the schematic and rearrange and resolder all these wires so the solar panel charge controller will be feeding into our new battery rig. And there you have it, a mostly covert, self-sustaining Meshtastic node for anywhere between 25 and 50 bucks, depending on how many of my luxurious add-ons you put into it. And if you bend the antennas down, it looks extremely inconspicuous. And when our solar lawn lights are banned because ICE found out that people are using them for encrypted off-the-grid communication, I am more than happy to participate in an arms race of how many common household items I can cram a comm setup inside. Now let's turn it up a notch. Obviously, mesh communication becomes more powerful when
That's actually really cool how he... It's actually really cool how he was just able to hide it, and you could not really tell that it was a Meshtastic device. There we go.
And if you bend the antennas down, it looks...
Yeah, like... I mean, I guess the antenna facing down, but that's like really all it is, and you could maybe angle that, or even put it in a different location. So it would be like at the top or like the side. It would be like flush with the side.
Extremely inconspicuous. And when our solar lawn lights are banned because ICE found out that people are using them for encrypted off-the-grid communication, I am more than happy to participate in an arms race of how many common household items I can cram a comm setup inside. Now let's turn it up a notch. Obviously, mesh communication becomes more powerful when you can connect to more nodes. And if you wanted to drastically and quickly increase the range of your solar lamp, you could just mount it up in a high place, like next to a gutter or something. But I'm afraid that if you live in a rural or semi-rural area, that lawn lamp isn't going to cut it. So we need a 12-watt solar panel, a mount for the panel, a waterproof electronics box, a big-ass 915 megahertz antenna, an antenna cable, a Heltec Meshtastic device, and 2 rechargeable batteries offering around 7,000 milliamp hours. We don't really need to worry about extended Bluetooth connectivity because, remember, this isn't a Meshtastic user node, but a repeater node. I should only have to set it up once and then never bother with it again. Safely mounting and grounding an antenna is always a bit of a pain in the ass, but the rest was astonishingly easy, and I immediately picked up a whole lot more nodes in the southeast. And it's worth mentioning that my compound here is on top of a small mountain, and now I kind of want to build a tower up here that would connect all of Atlanta. Come to think of it, I'm going to put this on my videos to consider list for 2026. By the way, you don't have to use...
I also just love the fact, like, he's in Atlanta, dude. I'm like 3 hours away from this guy. That's what it's just so cool when, like, you know, big people that are doing cool shit are around you.
Use Meshtastic on this build. There's also MeshCore, which offers some advantages in efficiency and encryption at the expense of range and ease of use. If you wanted to use that instead, it's as simple as plugging the radio board into your computer via USB and changing the firmware. Unfortunately, there seems to be a whole lot of astroturfing about this, because why the hell would anybody be able to enjoy anything on the internet? So it's actually really hard to find objective information between the two protocols. My advice is that if you're new to this and you don't already have a community of friends using it, then Meshtastic would be a great gateway for most users. If it's not working well, the default settings are not for everyone, and there's a whole lot of quick changes you can make in the app that drastically change performance. If you already have a bunch of people that you can locally connect to that use MeshCore, then give that a try and ask them to give you the ideal settings for your area. Just remember, one is not superior to the other, and anybody claiming so is full of shit. The good news is that it costs you literally nothing to try out different protocols, and exploration is encouraged. Anyway, DIY Meshtastic devices would make a fantastic gift for just about anyone, anarchist or not, and hopefully one day when we've rejected mass surveillance, all of these flock cameras can become decentralized repeater nodes. But until then, I've spent a soul-crushing amount of time.
This looks like one of the most useful fucking things, man. It literally can tell you where license plate readers are. Flock cameras. It will literally tell you where, like, how to find them.
I'm making videos on this channel
Fucking
covering
genius.
flock safety's uncomfortable omnipresence and 50+ security vulnerabilities. But one thing that I never really touched on was how to detect, log, and track hidden flock safety cameras in the first place. Fortunately, a hacker by the name of Colonel Panic, with the help of GainSec, had explored this and came up with a pretty amazing solution appropriately called FlockU that runs on a Wii Spy device. And it looks like this. It would truly be a controversy if I didn't have ESP32 featured somewhere in this video. ESP32 is basically a series of super inexpensive low-power microcontrollers with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connectivity. Most of the libraries are fully open source, and for the few that aren't, there's a large community reverse engineering them to make it so. Depending on where you're getting them, ESP32 boards can cost as little as $5. Or for example, here's a 32-bit dual-core board with an AI camera module that has object recognition built in. It also has a digital microphone, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and battery charging chip. This costs under $20. Generally speaking, if you have an idea for a portable, connectable device, 4 out of 5 times, ESP32 hardware will be what turns that idea into a functional prototype. The Wii Spy device is basically an ESP32 S3 chip with a buzzer and some custom printed PCB. It runs about $22.50 for the two PCBs and around $70 for the fully assembled device. And this is a bargain when you consider that depending
from a
on
TikTok
what firmware you're
comment,
loading
so.
on it, it could be a device that exploits Unitree humanoid and dog robots, or a radio direction finding device, or a fox hunter, or a drone tracker and identifier that can monitor and log up to 8 drones at once. And of course, a flock safety camera recognizer and detector that uses data sets of device IDs ranging from ALPR cameras to acoustic surveillance devices to detect and
so
log them into a mapped database. And as one would expect, it makes a little noise when it detects a flock device, and it even has a heartbeat sensor to let you know your proximity to it while driving or walking around.
A heartbeat sensor? Are you
There it
freaking
is.
kidding me?
It's easy to set up. Even on Windows, if you have Python installed, you just install Platform.io core and then set up a virtual environment and then run a Python script.
I
that
love
gets
how it's
everything up and running
FlockU.
for you. That actually sounds a little bit complicated, but
I
it's
love
really just
wordplay
like
like
2
that.
commands and 2 clicks. Then you just head over to your web browser of choice and you have a GUI with various customizations and a map to keep all of your detected devices, which you can choose to share to larger databases like DFlock. You can mount it in your car, 3D print a keychain, hook up a larger antenna, or even buy a retro punk rock patch from Colonel Panic with one embedded inside it. I personally decided to go completely apeshit and print out a rifle-like handle for a directional Wi-Fi Yagi antenna that's connected to an Alpha network card between the nozzle and the Wii Spy. Now, just to taper your expectations
sorry,
a bit, the
what?
flock detection isn't perfect. as the
Brother,
database
I'm
needs
sorry,
to be updated
what?
to larger databases like DFlock. You can mount it in your car, 3D print a keychain, hook up
You
a
gotta
larger
run
antenna,
that
or even
back.
buy a retro
What
punk
did you
rock
just
patch
say?
from Colonel Panic with one embedded inside it. I personally decided to go completely apeshit and print out a rifle-like handle for a directional Wi-Fi Yagi antenna that's connected to an Alpha network card between the nozzle and the Wii Spy. Now, just to taper your expectations a bit, the flock detection isn't perfect, as the database needs to be updated to catch the most recent camera models, and obviously the device is typically not going to detect a camera until it's in range where it's already visible to you. But more importantly for this list, open ESP32 devices like this not only have plenty of alternate firmwares with new uses, but they're practically screaming to be customized. I can almost guarantee that my Wii Spy will be doing something completely completely different this time next year. Customizable hardware and open source is truly the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, oh dude. I did not understand what a fucking blessing open source, like software and shit was until I probably started doing Blender. And then people would like give project files. They would just be like, oh yeah, dude, this shit's gonna be open source. Even like streaming, even like OBS plugins. GitHub's the GOAT, man. There's not a better spot. GitHub. GitHub is everything that image just was. It is a utopia.
Anarchism is a person or a group of people opting to not participate in authoritative rule that threatens their free will. So more often than not, historians refer to notable anarchist communities by how much of a problem those in power had with those communities. A wonderful example of this in history would be the Taborites. Back in the early 15th century, a famous philosopher and motivational speaker by the name of Jan Hus had some reformative ideas about the Catholic Church and was promised safe passage to Prague to share and debate them. And by safe passage, the Catholic Church meant safely tethered to a stake while being lit on fire. This pissed off a lot of Hus's fans, and they decided to move out to the woods and start a little town called Tabor, about 50 miles south of Prague. In this community, somewhere between 10 and 15,000 people, aka the Taborites, created the weirdest flags in history. They also decided that there would be no servants or peasants. Everybody would chip in.
Dude, no. Okay, wait, whoa.
There would be no taxation, and there would be no Hus's fans, and they decided to move out to the woods and start a little town called Tabor, about 50 miles south of Prague. In this community, somewhere between 10 and 15,000 people, aka the Taborites, created the weird...
Bro, I'm sorry. Can we focus on the duck one? Do I need to go back a second?
Somewhere between 10 and 15,000 people, aka...
Can we not say this is hard? Brother, I mean, like, it's kind of a gas idea. Like, I feel like there should be an English football team or, like, a cricket team that's known as the Fighting Geese. Is there not, like, a cricket team or a rugby team that's just, like, the Fighting Geese? It's kind of like the Muddy Ducks.
The Taborites created the weird.
But it's British Mighty Ducks.
They also decided that there would be no servants or peasants. Everybody would chip in and have the same opportunities. There would be no taxation, and there would be no property that wasn't collectively owned by everyone. This not only could be the first anarchist society, but the first communist one. The Catholic Church has notoriously never been one to vibe with societies not believing what the Catholic Church believes, so they ordered the Taborites to be drowned. The Taborites fended off not one crusade, not two crusades, but 5 crusades in what would eventually be known as the Hussite Wars. A cool 100 years after that,
not the Huss Wars.
Martin Luther was inspired by Jan Hus and Taborite ideas, and he literally pirated the Bible so unordained people could read it, which led to European Reformation, which more or less ended the Middle Ages and brought in the modern age. Anyway.
Wait, fucking W. Took the Bible and made it readable for
so like
all.
Most of us,
I love that.
You want to know if it's going to rain later today. So you take a quick peek at a weather site or app, and after sifting through nearly 50 megabytes of auto-playing videos, ads, and clickbait, you get to see this. Now, if you didn't want to see as many ads and garbage, most major weather platforms offer monthly or yearly subscriptions. But here's the thing. You already paid for this information with your tax dollars. And for the most part, private weather forecasting is just repurposing and monetizing data from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and the NWS, the National Weather Service. Virtually anybody with an internet connection can freely access weather forecasts, warnings, maps, satellite imagery, and radar. If you have a weather fetish, you can feast your eyes on sexy things like convective outlooks and current mesoscale discussions. And it needs to be pointed out that the National Weather Service leads the world in forecasting and warning of catastrophic weather events and data acquisition and analysis. And NOAA is used as a vital asset for forecasting and research by nearly every country in the world. It's truly something that Americans can be proud of. So what happens if one day weather.gov
the hell was that,
is
dude?
Taken offline? Well, since
bald
virtually every
eagle
commercial
made
weather
out of
service
French
relies on that
onion
data,
dip.
they'd be bouncing between shared European data and the Farmer's Almanac? Or what happens if there's a mass power or internet outage due to a hurricane or some type of catastrophic weather event? Well, I have some good news. There are 15 NOAA imaging and research satellites hanging out in the sky. And in my case, for the east side of the United States, it'll be up there doing its thing for the next 15 years, whether your tyrannical government likes it or not. And the best part that way too few people realize is a thing is that you can access this data directly from the satellite for as little as $50 if you just want to hold an antenna and get a quick weather forecast, and closer to $190 if you want a permanent uplink that downloads high-resolution real-time data. And
That's
that data consists of
crazy.
everything from visible light photography of the entire planet to long-wave reflections to dust and wind analysis. And all of this is unlimited with no cell phone tower, internet, or radio license required. Okay, the first thing you need to do is pick out a satellite. And this is actually way
That's
more fun and less confusing than it
crazy.
sounds. There's a completely free and frankly incredible program called Skyroof.
This would be crazy good. This would be crazy good if a zombie apocalypse ever broke out, because then you could be able to track hurricanes. Track hurricanes, storms. And maybe you would see other things. Like, obviously you wouldn't see people. It might be useful for people, actually, because okay, stick with me here. If the whole world goes dark, then you shouldn't be able to see any lights from these satellite images. So if you do see spots that are lit up, then you could know that a city has survived.
Where you can punch in your location and it gives you a rundown of where they all are, what frequency they're operating on, and when and where they'll be accessible to you. If you're new at this, I'm going to recommend GOES, which stands for Geostationary Operational Environmental Satellites. The key word here is geostationary, meaning that you probably have one somewhere above your head in the same spot 24 hours a day, 365 days per year. The most challenging part of this whole project is going to be pointing a dish or antenna precisely at a satellite, so not having a moving object is incredibly convenient. But once you're comfortable with that process, there's a pretty wide range of satellites that you can track and scoop data from relatively affordably. For this video, I wanted to keep everything as easy as possible and relatively affordable, so I used a New Elect GOES weather satellite bundle that I got for under $200. It comes with the dish, a pole mount, cables, a software-defined radio capable of reaching the required frequencies, and a filter and amplifier combo called the Sawbird Plus. And that little notch filter really does ease the amount of time you would spend tinkering or fine-tuning this project. Quite possibly the most important thing to consider with this project that unfortunately a lot of people take shortcuts on is that if you're planning on setting up the hardware indoors and then running the antenna cable outside, you're going to have a much lower signal to noise ratio. The filter or amp needs to be as close to the dish as possible. Otherwise, that long cable that you're running outside is just turning into a noisy antenna that the amp is amplifying that has nothing to do with satellites. I'm now realizing that this sounds way more complicated than it is when I'm putting it into words. I am running one powered Ethernet cable outside from my computer, and then there's just a daisy chain of things going into the satellite dish. So it's actually very simple. What is not as simple is aligning the dish. Okay, so in my case on the East Coast, the closest and most visible is GOES 19, which is just southeast of me. Head to dishpointer.com and punch in your address and satellite. Zoom in and you'll be able to find a general idea of where you'll be aiming, which will help you decide where to put the dish. Obviously, you want to put it in a place where you have a clear line of sight view of the place in the sky where the satellite is. And write down these numbers and the true azimuth and elevation, as this will come in handy. I used a compass app called Compass. Make sure that you calibrate your phone or tablet
Sounds
first,
like a
then
good
use the
app.
great thing,
Wait.
and then match up your azimuth and
Wait.
elevation at the location of your dish. In my
He's
case, there
giving
was a squirrel's
big
nest at
fucking
the top of a
tips
tree
right
just
now.
under where I needed to be aiming. At first, I used an RF spectral analyzer and then a portable SDR radio and wasted about an hour trying to lock in a signal. Do me a favor and learn from my mistakes, save yourself some time, and just get a laptop or an Android phone or tablet and have it run free software called SatDump, as it'll let you know your signal to noise ratio at that exact frequency. It's also obviously really handy to have the actual decoder you'll be running while doing the alignment, so you're not wondering if you could have done a better job later. Finally, we're ready to cook. We'll want to load up SatDump's UI, select your SDR, and punch in your GOES frequency, which is frequently 1694.1 megahertz. Then you select
like,
your
this is gonna be
satellite mode,
super
in this case,
useful
GOES
during a
HRIT,
zombie.
and keep an
during the
eye on the
zombies.
signal-to-noise ratio down here. Anything above 1 decibel works, anything above 3 or 4 decibel works reliably. Mine was actually pretty bad at first, but it still synced and downloaded images just fine. And if everything went smoothly, you'll be downloading high-resolution images and forecast data within a few minutes. I literally just let mine run overnight so I could build a time-lapse. Beautiful.
Let it run for a few weeks using
And if you
an
get
SDR
super into
play
this
with
and make
better
a hobby out of
SLR.
it, spending a few $100
That's
on
so
a better
cool.
SDR will give you a much lower noise floor and a higher bit rate, which allows you to connect to other modes that deliver more high-resolution images, videos, and measurements. And really, honestly, the reason that this is such a good
Like,
gift is because
actually
it opens the
fucking
door to
beautiful.
software-defined radio, which is an absolute treasure chest of independently run projects and experiments. Not to mention an instant and accessible gateway to explore the crazy and active world of modern radio. By the way, I posted a little clip of this to Instagram and got some messages telling me to check out Save It for Parts, which turns out to be a hugely underappreciated YouTube channel that is a goldmine of projects like this, primarily using objects that would have otherwise been discarded. And if like $200 is too much for you to
that's
invest
sick.
right now and you really want to try this out, there are a whole lot of unused satellite dishes out there that people would love for you
might
to
have to
haul
check
off
out their
property. Save It for
videos.
Parts is the guy and YouTube channel that can show you how to set all that up.
That sounds kind of crazy.
Back in the early 2000s, I was really sick of January in Chicago, and I had very few responsibilities and a brand new credit card, so I decided to drive to Guatemala. And I took an adventurous route, which led through a lot of morditas, which is a nice word for being stopped by corrupt police and negotiating a fee for your freedom. But there was nothing that could psychologically
Damn.
prepare me for being stopped at a roadblock and seeing a sign like this: Rebels. Jungle Rebels. Admittedly, I didn't know much about Jungle Rebels at the time, but I knew that it was probably not good for my life expectancy.
That is not
the armed
good.
guards at the
Okay, I know. Okay. That kind of doesn't. I was gonna say something that doesn't really have any relevance. My roommate's from Colombia, and I know Colombia has been going through some shit.
block asked
the
me where
past
I was
couple
headed,
years.
and I told them that I was staying in San Cristobal, a nearby city, and they told me that the route on my map wasn't good. and
Different
showed
parts
me a
of the
different
world,
one.
but-
And then they shook my hand and assured me that I was safe and told me to not be anxious about shopping or eating in rebel territory or asking questions, and they just asked that I remained respectful. Unfortunately, their reassurance didn't do very much to ease my anxiety, and I tried to get out of rebel territory as quickly as possible, and that is one of my biggest regrets in life, because I knew nothing about the Zapatista movement at the time, and
Yeah.
I definitely didn't realize that I had traveled to an autonomous zone that didn't answer to the Mexican government or any government for that matter. The Zapatista Army of National Liberation, fueled by the experience of poverty and mistreatment of indigenous people, firmly rejected the North American Free Trade Agreement. This 300,000 plus member community didn't want to overthrow the Mexican government, they just didn't want to be part of it anymore, and they were prepared to fight for this freedom. The 8 Zapatista principles are, in no particular order through my dodgy translation: don't command your community, obey it. Don't impose ideas, propose them. Represent your community instead of speaking for them. This one is the most difficult to translate and explain. Go
Yeah.
down and don't go up, meaning that new ideas should always challenge traditional forms of power and take the most vulnerable into consideration. Any Zapatistas watching this, feel free
Okay,
to tell
I
me
like
in the
that,
ass
I
on
like
the
that.
comments if I'm butchering this. Construction should always be prioritized over destruction. Everything for everyone.
Of course, construction over destruction. Sometimes you gotta destroy to create, though. It's a process. It's a cycle.
Nothing for ourselves. And finally, we
It's actually more of a spiral if you think about it than a circle. It's more of a spiral. That's what I like to say.
want a world where many worlds fit, meaning that you empower the community by recognizing and learning from the struggle.
You want a world where many worlds fit. I like that as well. That's actually a really good phrasing of like just bringing a lot of people together, kind of like the melting pot of America.
of marginalized individuals. It's also important
Having
to
different
note that
cultures
Zapatista
interact, but
communities
still
have always
remain
refused
independent
help, aid,
and can
charity,
create a
or any
fusion.
dependence from outside sources. They view their complete sustainability as a vital role in their autonomy. Now, despite being a successfully functioning society without aid, state, police, or participation in global capitalism, if you asked a Zapatista if they were an anarchist, they would likely say no, because it's a European term and they have no interest in being defined by European terms. Fair enough. So in a region teeming with poverty, substance abuse, and drug cartels, even by national standards, how is it that this area of Chiapas remained one of the safest places in Mexico without a single police officer or prison? This is accomplished through community justice. If a crime is committed, there are 3 levels of appeal. Level 1, the local community. If someone commits petty theft, vandalism, or something minor, an unpaid, temporarily elected community agent encourages all parties in the dispute
Wait,
to
are the
talk it out and reach
Zapatistas
a conclusion
based?
and a handshake. If there's a more serious crime or dispute that can't be solved locally, a regional group is formed from a rotating body of elected authorities to investigate the facts and propose a resolution. And if that's not working, you go to level 2, a trial. There's no attorneys allowed, there's no court fees. The rotating body of authorities propose a solution that satisfies the victim and the community. And then sometimes level 3, if needed, a punishment. Usually in the form of restitution, community service, or re-education, which consists of lengthy private communication with the elders, which I guess is kind of like therapy. And if you refuse your punishment, there's a lot of social stigma, which is actually pretty unbearable in a small collective community. And in the very rare extreme cases, the nuclear option is expulsion. You lose your place in the community and you are free to experience a terrible life as an indigenous criminal in Mexico. This sounds like I'm describing a peaceful utopia, but on day one,
they just
of the
say,
Zapatistas
"Get
declaring
fucking
independence in
outta here,
1994,
buddy."
The Mexican government deployed as many as 70,000 troops to Chiapas that used tanks and helicopters to bomb Zapatista villages. And after 12 days of this violence leading to enormous protests in Mexico City, they eased up but remained stationed surrounding the autonomous zones. And also, since the hobby of violently attacking defenseless indigenous villages comes with international outrage, the government started funding paramilitary groups instead that paid and armed other indigenous people in the region who carried out attacks on Zapatista communities. A lot of these attacks specifically were operations that assaulted women or burned crops. And in Actil, the paramilitaries entered a church and murdered 45 pacifist Zapatista sympathizers while they were praying. Most of them were women and children. It took 23 years for the Mexican government to admit responsibility and apologize to the victims' families in 2020. Over the last 2 decades, constant ideological attacks in combination with unchecked cartel violence on open community centers eventually forced the dissolution of autonomous municipalities. In other words, as far as I can tell, the experiment's over, despite it kind of being successful.
Know exactly when
So a
Big
little
Brother
bit of
is
backstory
eavesdropping?
supplier. Every
Okay, this
device
is a useful
that
one
connects
as
to a
well.
cellular network, and even some that do not, have an IMSI, which stands for International Mobile Subscriber Identity. A mobile phone network operator can triangulate and track the location of devices using this number, and to prevent misuse or even scarier stuff from happening, most of the time the provider issues a TMSI, or Temporary Mobile Subscriber Identity. So generally, if the police or ICE wants to track an individual on a cellular network like T-Mobile, they have to supply T-Mobile with a judicial warrant. And that judicial warrant requires probable cause that a crime has been or will be committed, and typically requires a complete context of the situation and specifics regarding what is being searched or tracked. It's just that when James Madison wrote the Fourth Amendment, he clearly wasn't taking police officers' feelings or convenience into consideration. But the Fourth Amendment gets really annoying for ICE agents, as being an undocumented person isn't actually a crime at all. It's a civil violation. As of November of 2025, over 2/3 of ICE arrests are of individuals with no criminal convictions. So what do you do when you've taken a job as an ICE agent and now have orders to detain people who aren't suspected of committing crimes? The best option would be to find a more respectable job, like a used car salesman or lobbyist, or I suppose another option would be voluntary euthanasia. But if you're following tradition, then
Dude, the fuck? Brother, he's just telling ICE officers to go kill themselves? I'm sorry.
a used car salesman or a lobbyist, or I suppose another option would be voluntary euthanasia. But if you're following tradition, then you'll use
He's just
taxpayer
saying,
money
hey,
to
if you're
buy
gonna be an
devices
ICE agent, go kill yourself instead.
that make phony cell phone towers that track people using their devices IMSI. One brand name of such devices is Stingray or Kingfish, but there are plenty of options available from various vendors. They operate as a man-in-the-middle attack, such as the ones that I've highlighted in previous videos when hacking wireless routers. In this case, you're tricking people's devices into connecting to a phony cell phone tower.
Write this
by
down.
broadcasting
Write this
a
fucking
stronger
down. This is
signal
gonna
than
be
the real
useful.
one. And in populated areas, this can amount to thousands of innocent people who are completely unrelated to your investigation being
I think that this and the Flock camera finder notifier are definitely the two most useful things. The other two that he showed, the satellite weather maps and the mesh networks, for like texting over long distances, those are going to be only useful in the zombie apocalypse scenarios we've discussed.
Victims of the attack. Now, if you or I did something like this in America, we would be violating quite a lot of cybersecurity laws as well as the Federal Wiretap Act. But cell site simulators have been used for upwards of a decade by law enforcement and ICE, and just recently were reported to have been used on protesters. Technically, in many states, you need a warrant to use an attack like this, but many agencies can do it with only a court order, or they just do it regardless of what the Constitution allows. So sometimes you have to take things into your own hands. There are various operational mechanisms for IMSI catchers, but you generally use a high-power beacon to trick your phone into connecting. Then they downgrade your connection to an older protocol. The older, the better. 5G generally has a lot of protection against this type of thing, although it's not perfect, and a really determined and well-funded agency could probably pull it off. 4G or LTE has some notable weaknesses. 3G has terrible encryption that could be decrypted in real time, and 2G is pretty much a free-for-all. Forcing individual users into these less secure protocols makes tracking them a whole lot easier. So if you're, I don't know, at a protest or you're a person of interest for ICE, and if you notice that you have a 4G or LTE logo, there's a chance that you're connecting to a fake cell site and being tracked. If you notice that you're connecting to 3G or 2G, that's really
crazy.
sus. And unless you're in an extremely rural area or somewhere you'd expect to be roaming out of network, I'd recommend shutting your phone off entirely. But I still get 4G and LTE signals all the time. How can I know whether I'm connecting to T-Mobile's tower or Fascist Mobile's tower? Fortunately for us, a whole lot of companies
still
made
need
a
more
whole
ways
lot
to
of
identify.
portable data hotspot devices, and they essentially just act as internet routers for your Nintendo Switch or your laptop that can connect to your mobile network's data connection rather than a landline internet connection or Wi-Fi. Also, fortunately, most smartphones have this functionality built in already, so not a lot of people bought these, causing them to pile up on eBay for a small fraction of what they retailed for. And
No, it's a good idea because he's basically just saying ensure that you're on the correct network by getting your own device to supply it instead of trusting any outside sources. I mean, it's kind of like a basic thing, not super
Fortunately, a
like
lot of these
DIY.
hotspot devices were pretty poorly secured themselves, which
But it is
enabled
still,
them
like,
to be
good advice,
repurposed as
generally.
really effective phony cell tower detectors. The EFF organizes and hosts various types of software to make this conversion as simple as possible. For my $20 Orbic, I had the option of using ADB, USB, or just connecting to the device via Wi-Fi, and I went with the latter. It only takes you a few seconds to flash the firmware, you reboot, and then you have a little line that turns green, white, or red depending on the status of nearby cell connections. You can also connect to the device with a GUI in a web browser and edit the settings, even allowing you to send notifications to your actual phone or tablet if a cell simulator is detected. It's portable, it runs all day on a charge, and it costs less than a case of beer. Now imagine sitting across from your anarchist nephew on a holiday and explaining what this does as they open the box and power it on. They will talk about how fucking cool you are for the rest of your life. This one was a failure, probably due to my own lack of expertise. And one of the reasons why I'm including it here is that maybe it'll inspire somebody with that expertise to actually pull it off. That'd be awesome. So one of the things that I've been trying to do on this channel for ages is to make an accessible alternative to Spotify or digital music streaming platforms, like a Goldilocks zone of convenience, compatibility, artist support, owning the music you enjoy, and most importantly, being able to discover and listen to music on your own without an algorithm doing it for you. And there are so many devices and tools and projects available that this kind of sounds like an easy thing to curate. It is not. It is very much not. A lot of people who do this use an old computer or a mini PC and then use something like Jellyfin, or in unfortunate cases, MB or Plex, which has you paying a subscription fee to access your own files. In most cases, running a
that's why I
computer
don't like
made for desktop use
Plex.
for a streaming music server is inefficient and not terribly reliable, and I'm just not satisfied with that solution. Even running a single board computer like a Raspberry Pi isn't great for this, due to the fact that the boards and storage are not meant to be on 24/7. But there is one type of inexpensive, always-on, and headless device that can run fairly complex operations: Wi-Fi routers. The goal was to get a $30 GLINet Shadow Travel router to run a Jellyfin server. I installed some OpenWRT firmware and quickly realized that the RAM limitations alone would push it too much to be reliable. So I upgraded to the $100 Slate Axe, which kind of has a similar ecosystem but with a quad-core CPU and 512 megabytes of RAM. A few excruciating eyeball bleeding days later, after learning a whole lot about how routers work while trying to have a device access and launch Docker containers stored on a Linux formatted high-speed USB drive, I realized that if
Fuck
I actually managed to
that.
get this to work, it probably wouldn't be the stable and reliable music server that I'm looking for. And even if I got it running,
I mean, to be clear, I have no fucking idea what he said. I understand the words separately, but I do not understand the sentence that he said. I don't have enough comprehension to put everything together. I understand the words separately. But what he's actually trying to
router
do.
and give you the scripts to run, the setup process would be like 20 steps and involve you risking destroying the device. Sometimes you just have to admit defeat. What I did learn is that gl.inet, Glynet, I love it when you spend so much time reading about something or researching something and never speaking to another human being about it. And months down the road, you realize that you have no idea how to pronounce it. But what I did learn is that Glynet routers are incredible for people who want to tinker. I definitely tried experimenting with my own firmware builds, and I bricked the router in the process. At one point, I literally thought it was on fire. But there's a whole alternative recovery boot mode that tries to save it and allow you to go back to stock firmware, which worked like 4 out of 5 times. But even when my dumbass pushed this device past the point where even the recovery mode wouldn't work, to my utter surprise, the user manual has a pinout of the board, which has available JTAG and UART connections, which means that I was able to manually write the stock firmware back onto the system BIOS memory chip. I simply cannot emphasize how much cooler and less wasteful the world would be if the FCC or FTC required every electronic device to have documentation and open access like this. So even though my little travel router hosted music streaming idea took a shit, this still could host media on local networks, or more importantly, easily operate as a super customizable VPN tunnel, ad blocker, or Tor router, all of which happen to be ways that anarchists like to browse the internet without their data and identity being mined for profit. So it kind of does make it to this list. I suppose it's the only currently available mass-produced line of consumer products to do so. And it's worth pointing out that I don't have any sort of relationship with the company. I'm just really horny for products that make it easy for me to modify or repair them.
Anarchism.
When the average Westerner thinks of anarchism, they think of fire, overturned vehicles, and broken windows. And while those associations are not necessarily wrong, they do require context. A good example of how context changes everything would be the case of Casey Goonan. He is accused of trying to firebomb an empty federal courthouse in Oakland during a protest. Now, it'll take you quite a bit of searching and reading between the lines to learn that this firebombing amounted to igniting a Molotov cocktail in a concrete planter near the building, destroying a shrub. He also lit a bag of Molotov cocktails on fire near a police vehicle, which may have contributed to the vehicle being burned, as apparently everybody and their mom was lighting cop cars on fire that night. Fortunately, Casey's antics didn't lead to anybody being injured, but this type of arson in California, if it leads to property damage, is punishable by 16 months in prison, and fines are up to $10,000. And Casey pled guilty to malicious damage or destruction of property by fire or explosive. But since Casey is a self-proclaimed anarchist who was protesting the Israeli occupation of Gaza, prosecutors called him a domestic terrorist, and he was sentenced to 20 years imprisonment in a specially designated communications management unit with restrictions on visitors, phone calls, and even communication with other prisoners. Maybe you're thinking what I'm thinking. It seems like over 18 years of Casey's 20-year sentence is for his beliefs, not the inarguably dumb shit that he did during the protest. Another California man received a 20-year sentence for his violent actions outside of a government building at a protest, David Dempsey. Dave sprayed a police officer with pepper spray, beat him with a flagpole, and stomped on his head over 5 times among a long list of attacks on multiple law enforcement officers at this protest. And he pled guilty to these charges, but since the riot he attended was at the Capitol building on January 6th, he received an unconditional pardon and is enjoying his freedom without a single demerit on his criminal record. The difference between these two cases, other than one person causing property damage
Probably
and the
works
other
for
person
fucking
causing
ice right
injury,
now,
is
dude.
entirely up here. One was on the right, one was on the left. Violent patriot, violent anarchist. And the irony is that if you strongly agree with me that this is a malpractice of justice, then you are guilty of the same crime that added 18 years to Casey Goonan's sentence, the crime of having a philosophy that dissents from your government. My goal here is not to justify violence or even lighting shrubs on fire, nor is it to convert my viewers into anarchists.
Brother,
or even
it's also
identify-
like the guy who in DC who threw a Jersey Mike sandwich at a ICE agent or like a border patrol guy or whatever he was. they were like, the administration was like, we're gonna throw the book at this guy, we're gonna get him for assaulting a police officer, we're gonna get him for all this shit. And then it came out like, oh yeah, so we're dropping the charges, we're just gonna let this guy go free. We found that everything was totally fine, he never got hurt. But like, the fucking officer was like, I felt it through my Kevlar vest, I got all mustard over me, I just sprayed, it was terrible for me. And it was like, motherfucker, the sandwich was still in its wrapper. Like, you're lying. You're lying right now. And we all know that you're lying. You're the only person who is believing your lies in this moment.
As an anarchist myself, I just want you to more frequently question and recognize the absurdity of institutions in your day-to-day life, because it can only benefit you to do so.
I suppose this whole thing has gone on long enough, but I learned so much while making this video, and I hope some of y'all learned something from watching it. And if you couldn't tell, I love bundling things together
I would
in
love to
videos
do like
this
a
because
Raspberry
person who's
Pi
looking for
project.
information on mesh
I've
tastic
never
solar
fucked
lights
with
might
any
be
like
even more
coding or
interested in
anything
using
like
an
that,
SDR
but
to pull data
it
from
seems like it'd be
satellites, or
fun.
might be an expert in network hardware development who can get Jellyfin running on a router successfully, one can hope. If you want to see more videos like this and support this channel and project in general, my Patreon offers loads of released and unreleased music, sound design assets, audio production assets, and a big old friendly community. In just the last year, my Patreon members have almost exclusively enabled this channel to be able to conduct and explain research that is impacting legislation all over the country. And now that the end of the year is here, anything that doesn't carry over into future
frickin'
projects will go
video.
to charity. And you can join for as little as $1.
Based.
Thanks for watching. Keep creating. Bye.
Absolutely based, okay?